The emergency klaxons screamed through Centauri colony's primary habitat dome, a sound that would haunt survivors for generations to come. Commander Rachel Henderson gripped the communication console of the merchant vessel Starlight Horizon, her knuckles white beneath tan skin that betrayed her mixed heritage. Outside the view screen, the colony transformed from a beacon of human achievement into a hellscape of disintegrating metal and vaporized dreams. 12 minutes earlier, the first Zarnak battleships had emerged from subspace with terrifying precision. No warnings, no diplomatic transmission, just pure, calculated destruction. Multiple impact zones confirmed. Lieutenant Daniel Morgan reported from the sensor station, his voice cracking. Fusion reactors in sectors 7 through 12 are going critical. We're looking at total habitat compromise in less than 20 minutes. Rachel watched in horror as the massive colony, humanity's first successful extrasolar settlement, began to break apart. Constructed over decades at a cost of nearly $3 trillion, the Centauri colony represented more than just a scientific achievement. It was proof that humans could survive beyond Earth, could build something lasting in the vast, indifferent darkness of space. Now, that proof was being systematically erased. Distress signals, she demanded, knowing the answer before Morgan could respond. Sporadic, he said, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. Communication networks are being deliberately jammed. But we're picking up pockets of resistance. Some emergency channels are still active. A sudden burst of static erupted from the communication array. Then a voice, raw, defiant, filled with both terror and rage. This is Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez of Centauri Colony Defense Force. To any human vessels within range, we are under sustained attack by unknown hostile forces, requesting immediate assistance. Repeat, colony is under. The transmission cut off abruptly. Rachel's mind raced. The Starlight Horizon was a merchant vessel, poorly equipped for combat. Her original mission had been a routine supply run, delivering medical equipment and agricultural supplements to the colony. Now she found herself witnessing humanity's first true encounter with galactic hostility. Captain Rodriguez is still broadcasting, whispered Elena Santos, the ship's navigation officer. Her hand trembled slightly as she adjusted their position, keeping them just outside the immediate combat zone. On the main view screen, the colony continued to die. Massive sections of the habitat dome fractured like glass, exposing internal structures to the vacuum. Emergency containment protocols activated in some sections, creating a patchwork of surviving zones amidst total destruction. We can't just watch, Daniel muttered, his young face etched with helplessness. Rachel knew he was right, but a single merchant vessel charging into a battlefield against a superior alien force would be suicide. Her training, years of space logistics and emergency response protocols, warred with the primal human instinct to help. A final transmission cut through the chaos. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice was different now, calm, almost eerily so. To whoever receives this, remember us. Remember Centauri. We did not fall silently. We fought. We resisted. Humanity will. The transmission dissolved into static. Massive energy signatures began to pulse from the Zarnak vessels. Secondary explosions rippled through the colony's remaining structures. What had been humanity's greatest off-world achievement was now becoming its most spectacular graveyard. Begin recovery operations, Rachel commanded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Prioritize any surviving escape pods or emergency shuttles, and start recording. Every single moment. Elena looked up, understanding immediately. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. This was documentation, evidence, a record that would be studied, analyzed, and most importantly, avenged. The Starlight Horizon's powerful tractor beams extended, carefully maneuvering through the expanding debris field. Each recovered piece of wreckage, each rescued survivor would become a testament to what the Zarnak had done this day. Outside, against the backdrop of destruction, something else was forming. Not just grief, not just shock, but the first sparks of a response that would shake the galaxy to its foundations. Humanity was watching, and humanity would not forget. Washington, D.C. had seen its share of crisis meetings, but nothing compared to the raw energy crackling through the Global Defense Command's primary war room. Retired Admiral James Calloway stood before a holographic display that burned with the last moments of the Centauri colony, his weathered fingers tracing the destruction with a mixture of rage and calculated determination. 72 hours, he muttered to General Loren Mitchell, his voice a low growl that seemed to emanate from somewhere deeper than his throat. That's how long we have before this becomes more than just a tragedy, before it becomes our defining moment. The room was a hurricane of activity. Communication screens flickered with real-time data from every major space facility on Earth. Young analysts worked with a frantic precision, their fingers dancing across holographic interfaces, pulling apart every scrap of information from the colony's final transmission. At the SpaceX Frontier headquarters in California, Elon Rodriguez watched the same footage for the 100th time. The company's massive manufacturing complex, originally designed for commercial space exploration and satellite deployment, was already transforming. Automated assembly lines that had been producing communication satellites and research probes now reconfigured themselves with terrifying speed. "We're looking at a complete retooling," explained Sarah Thompson, the chief of manufacturing. "Every production line will be adapted for combat-ready vessels within 48 hours. Rodriguez nodded, his eyes never leaving the screen. The attack on Centauri wasn't just an assault on a colony. It was a declaration of war against humanity itself. In Boston, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Advanced Research Labs became a crucible of innovation. Dr. Emily Reyes gathered her team, a diverse group of engineers, physicists, and computer scientists who had been working on theoretical space combat technologies. "Everything we've developed," she announced, her voice cutting through the nervous murmurs, "is now our weapon." Quantum communication networks that had been theoretical became practical necessities. Adaptive camouflage systems, previously dismissed as too complex for large-scale implementation, were now being fast-tracked into production. The scientific community, often fragmented by competition and academic rivalries, united with a single purpose. Across the globe, the response was equally dramatic. In Houston, the Johnson Space Center transformed its mission control into a military coordination hub. Retired astronauts and space engineers were recalled, their decades of experience suddenly becoming crucial to humanity's survival. Native American communities in Alaska contributed entire communication network infrastructures. Tech companies in India redirected satellite networks. European space agencies began sharing classified propulsion research that had been kept secret for years. "We're not just building ships," Admiral Calloway explained during a classified briefing. "We're building a statement, a message that will be understood in every corner of the galaxy." Private space mining corporations saw an opportunity beyond profit. Companies that had been competing for asteroid mining rights now pooled their automated fleets. Each drone, each mining vessel could be quickly converted into a combat-ready platform. In the American Midwest, entire farming communities began contributing in unexpected ways. Agricultural research centers started developing high-efficiency life support systems. Universities transformed research vessels into potential combat platforms. The global response wasn't just military, it was cultural. Social media exploded with a unity unseen in decades. People who had been divided by political ideologies now stood together, their differences erased by the magnitude of the attack. "We're looking at a potential fleet of over 700,000 vessels," General Mitchell reported, her finger tracking potential production lines. "And that's a conservative estimate." Rodriguez leaned back, a grim smile crossing his face. "They thought we were divided. They thought we were weak." Admiral Calloway nodded, watching the holographic display of Earth's rapidly mobilizing resources. "They have no idea what's coming." By the end of the 72 hours, humanity had transformed. What had been a collection of competing nations and corporate interests became a unified force. Every shipyard, every research facility, every technological resource was now pointed in a single direction. Revenge was no longer just an emotion. It was becoming a strategic plan. The galaxy had just awakened a sleeping giant, and this giant was done sleeping. The line stretched for miles outside the Chicago Recruitment Center. Mark Thompson watched from the steps, his retired teacher's leather jacket a stark contrast to the eager faces of young volunteers and seasoned veterans alike. A massive holographic display showed real-time footage of the Centauri colony's destruction, a constant reminder of why they were here. "I'm selling the farm," he had told his wife the previous night. The Thompson family had worked their Nebraska land for generations, but now that legacy would be repurposed into something greater. The entire proceeds would fund a combat support ship, a vessel that would carry the spirit of generations of hard-working Americans into the depths of space. At Stanford University, a different kind of contribution was taking shape. Engineering students worked in round-the-clock shifts, developing modular ship components that could be rapidly assembled and deployed. Jessica Rodriguez, a junior mechanical engineering major, had already designed 3 different adaptive hull configurations that could dramatically increase a ship's survivability. "It's not just about building ships," she explained to her team. "It's about creating a living, breathing defense network that can adapt faster than any alien technology." Indigenous communities across North and South America became crucial communication specialists. The Navajo Nation's long-standing expertise in complex communication protocols made their technical teams invaluable. Satellite networks were reconfigured, encrypted communication channels established with a sophistication that would make traditional military strategists weep. Crowdfunding platforms exploded with purpose. Where people once raised money for personal projects, now entire online communities pooled resources to construct individual ships or support components. A factory worker in Detroit might contribute $50, while the Silicon Valley programmer would add $50,000. Each contribution was a bullet in humanity's collective weapon. Space mining corporations saw an opportunity beyond mere profit. Automated mining fleets that had been extracting resources from asteroids and distant moons were rapidly being retrofitted. Each drone, each collection vessel became a potential combat platform. The cold mathematical precision of these machines would now serve a more urgent purpose. In Rio de Janeiro, a group of students from 3 different universities created the first open-source combat AI system. The software was designed to be adaptable, capable of learning and evolving faster than any centralized military command could manage. Within hours of its initial release, thousands of developers worldwide began contributing improvements. Sarah Mitchell, a veteran space logistics officer, coordinated the volunteer efforts. Her command center in Houston looked less like a military installation and more like a global collaboration hub. Real-time feeds showed contributions from every continent: shipyards in Korea, research centers in India, agricultural communities in Brazil. "We're not just building a fleet," she told her team. "We're building hope." Private space companies competed and collaborated simultaneously. What had once been cutthroat rivalries transformed into a unified effort. Launch facilities that had been competing for commercial contracts now worked in perfect synchronization, their combined capacity creating a manufacturing ecosystem unlike anything in human history. College campuses became unexpected arsenals of innovation. Engineering departments transformed research vessels into potential combat platforms. Computer science students developed communication protocols that could operate even if traditional networks were destroyed. Medical research teams worked on advanced life support and emergency medical systems that could function in the most extreme conditions. The global response transcended traditional boundaries. A programmer in Kenya might develop a crucial piece of navigation software. An engineer in Canada could design a revolutionary shield modulation system. A materials scientist in Australia might create a new hull composite that could withstand extreme energy impacts. By the end of the first month, Preliminary estimates showed a potential fleet of over 700,000 ships in various stages of construction and preparation. But these weren't just vessels. They were statements. Each ship carried the hopes, dreams, and defiance of an entire species. Mark Thompson stood in the recruitment center, watching young men and women sign up. His farm was sold, its value now converted into a combat support vessel that would carry humanity's message into the stars. The message was simple: we are not afraid. We will not be silenced. We are coming. The volunteer tempest was rising, and nothing would stop its momentum. The basement laboratory at MIT looked nothing like a traditional research space. Exposed circuit boards covered entire walls, holographic displays flickered with complex algorithms, and half-finished prototypes hung from custom-built mounting systems. Dr. Emily Rice stood at the center of this controlled chaos, her fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. "We're not just developing technology," she muttered to her team. "We're rewriting the fundamental rules of space combat." The swarm intelligence system took shape gradually. What began as a theoretical concept now became humanity's most potent weapon. Each ship would no longer be an individual unit but part of a living, breathing network that could adapt, learn, and respond faster than any centralized command structure. Across the country, Jason Kim's team in Seattle worked on adaptive camouflage technology that would make human ships virtually invisible to traditional scanning methods. Their breakthrough came from an unexpected source: studying the metamorphic capabilities of deep-sea creatures and quantum entanglement principles. Traditional stealth is about absorption and deflection, Kim explained during a classified briefing. We're creating ships that can dynamically alter their quantum signature. Essentially, we're making them exist between detection states. The military's traditional communication networks were completely redesigned. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, a quantum communication expert, developed a system of entangled communication arrays that could transmit information instantaneously, regardless of distance. Traditional limitations of speed-of-light communication became obsolete. In Houston, a team of neurological engineers led by Dr. Lauren Chen developed an unprecedented interface between human consciousness and ship systems. Pilots would no longer just control ships, they would become an integrated part of the vessel's operational matrix. "We're looking at a symbiotic relationship," Chen explained during a demonstration. The ship becomes an extension of the human mind, and the human becomes a living sensor network. University research centers that had been competing for grants now shared information with unprecedented openness. Classified technologies were declassified. Military research merged with civilian innovation. The attack on the Centauri colony had transformed the entire scientific ecosystem. Artificial intelligence development reached a critical breakthrough. Unlike previous generations of AI that were constrained by rigid programming, the new systems could learn, adapt, and make complex strategic decisions in microseconds. Machine learning algorithms developed by a collaborative team from Stanford and the Tokyo Institute of Technology could process combat scenarios faster than any human command structure. Space propulsion technologies saw radical reimagining. The traditional chemical and ion drives were abandoned in favor of experimental quantum vacuum thrusters. Researchers at the Los Alamos National Laboratory created drive systems that could manipulate spacetime itself, allowing for unprecedented maneuverability and speed. Energy weapon designs evolved beyond simple laser and plasma technologies. Researchers developed quantum disruption weapons that could theoretically disable entire ship systems by creating localized quantum instability fields. What seemed like science fiction months ago now became practical engineering. Life support systems were completely redesigned, no longer just about maintaining human survival. These new systems could rapidly adapt to multiple environmental conditions. A single ship could now transform its internal environment to support multiple alien physiological requirements, a capability that went far beyond simple military strategy. "We're not just preparing for a war," Dr. Rice told her team during a late-night strategy session. "We're creating a technological leap that will define the next century of human expansion." The most significant breakthrough came from an unexpected collaboration. A team of neural network researchers combined with quantum computing experts to develop an AI coordination system that could manage entire fleet strategies with unprecedented efficiency. The system could process multiple combat scenarios simultaneously, making decisions faster than any biological intelligence. At the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, materials scientists developed hull composites that could self-repair and adapt to different energy impacts. What would have previously been catastrophic damage could now be rapidly mitigated by the ship's own structural systems. Communication networks transformed into living, breathing ecosystems. Satellite systems originally designed for commercial and research purposes were repurposed into a global defense grid. Each node could now function as both a communication point and a potential combat platform. By the time the first prototypes rolled out, the scientific community understood something profound. They weren't just building ships. They were constructing the next stage of human evolution. The innovation crucible was heating up, and humanity was about to show the galaxy exactly what it was capable of creating. Captain Alexandra Gonzalez stood on the bridge of the U.S. Phoenix, her fingers barely touching the quantum interface that connected her neural pathways directly to the ship's systems. 10,000 vessels stretched behind her, a constellation of human defiance that seemed to pulse with a collective heartbeat. The Zarnak forward base materialized on the holographic display, a massive spatial installation that had been considered impregnable. Defensive grids shimmered like a spider's web of energy, designed to obliterate anything that approached. Intelligence reports suggested it was the primary command and logistics hub for the forces that destroyed the Centauri colony. All systems synchronized, reported Lieutenant Daniel Chen, his voice steady despite the tension crackling through the bridge. The neural network AI hummed beneath the surface of every ship's system, a living intelligence that processed combat scenarios faster than any biological mind could comprehend. Gonzalez took a deep breath. This wasn't just a military operation. This was humanity's first true response to an act of galactic aggression. "Initiate quantum camouflage," she commanded. Instantly, the entire human fleet began to shift. Not just visually, but at a quantum level. Ships didn't just become invisible. They became quantum ghosts existing in multiple potential states simultaneously. Traditional scanning systems would detect nothing more than background radiation and quantum noise. The Zarnak defensive grid was a marvel of alien engineering. Layered energy shields, predictive targeting systems, and automated defense platforms that could track and destroy incoming threats in microseconds. For centuries, this installation had been the nightmare of any species considering conflict with the Zarnak hegemony. They never saw the humans coming. The first wave struck like a quantum thunderbolt. Adaptive ships that could change their quantum signature faster than the defensive systems could track. Weapons that weren't just projectiles or energy beams, but complex quantum disruption fields that could unravel molecular bonds. Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez led a specialized squadron targeting the base's communication networks. Quantum entanglement communication systems allowed them to move with a synchronization that defied traditional combat logic. Where one ship moved, entire squadrons would shift in perfect, unpredictable patterns. Network infiltration at 67%, Chen reported. The AI was doing more than just fighting. It was learning. Every microsecond provided new data, new understanding of alien defensive systems. The Zarnak response was immediate but fractured. Their defensive systems, designed for traditional linear combat, couldn't process the fluid, almost organic way the human fleet moved. Ships didn't just dodge. They existed in multiple potential positions simultaneously. Defensive platforms that would have obliterated conventional attack formations found themselves targeting nothing. Quantum disruption weapons created localized fields of molecular uncertainty, turning the most robust alien defenses into scattered energy. Multiple critical systems compromised, Rodriguez called out. Entire sections of the Zarnak base began to destabilize, not through brute force, but through a systematic, almost surgical deconstruction of their technological infrastructure. Gonzalez watched the holographic display, her neural interface allowing her to experience the battle not just as a commander, but as a living part of the fleet's collective intelligence. Pain, fear, excitement. These were no longer individual experiences, but a shared consciousness. The base's primary reactor began to destabilize, not from direct weapons fire, but from a complex quantum cascade effect that the Zarnak defensive systems couldn't comprehend or counteract. This isn't just about destroying a base, Gonzalez muttered to herself. This is about sending a message. As the Zarnak installation began to collapse, human ships moved with a precision that seemed almost beautiful. Not a single human vessel was lost, not a single life sacrificed unnecessarily. The first transmission was sent immediately after the attack. A simple message, broadcast on all known frequencies. Centauri colony remembers. Humanity responds. When the quantum dust settled, the Zarnak would understand one fundamental truth. Humanity was no longer just a species to be cataloged or conquered. They were a force of technological and strategic evolution that would reshape the entire galactic understanding of warfare. The first thunder had spoken, and the galaxy was listening. The Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime fell silent. Holographic displays flickered with the remnants of the Zarnak forward base, an installation that had been considered invincible, now reduced to scattered quantum debris. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps stood before representatives of 17 different spacefaring civilizations. Her presentation was clinical, precise, devoid of emotion, a detailed breakdown of humanity's first strategic response. "What you are witnessing," she began, her voice cutting through the stunned silence, "is not an act of revenge. This is a demonstration of technological capability." The Voxenar delegation, a crystalline species known for their computational supremacy, leaned forward with impossible geometries. Their communication tendrils vibrated with what could only be described as professional respect. The Zarnak had been their primary economic and military rival for centuries. Now, humanity had done what no other civilization had managed. On the holographic display, the attack replayed, not as a violent spectacle, but as a mathematical ballet of quantum mechanics and strategic precision. Ships that weren't just vessels, but living networks of intelligence that could adapt faster than any known technological system. The human attack destroyed the base without a single casualty on their side, reported Krelax, the quantum analysis specialist from the Andromeda Cooperative. His multiple eyes scanned the data with a blend of fascination and concern. Their technological leap is unprecedented. Diplomatic channels that had been quiet for generations began to buzz with activity. The Zorlan Trade Consortium, always quick to sense shift in galactic power dynamics, began discreetly reaching out to human diplomatic missions. Economic opportunities that had been closed for decades suddenly seemed wide open. They didn't just attack a base, whispered the Chlorian ambassador, a gaseous entity that shifted colors with emotional states. They rewrote the fundamental understanding of space warfare. Intelligence agencies across multiple star systems began intense analysis. How had humanity, a species that just decades ago was confined to a single solar system, developed technologies that made established galactic powers look obsolete? The Quantum Communication Network, a system that connected multiple advanced civilizations, became flooded with encrypted analyses. Research centers from the Orion cluster to the Sigma Quadrant began intensive studies of the human attack logs. Some civilizations saw opportunity. The Nexus Trading Consortium immediately began drafting potential technology exchange proposals. Others, like the militant Karath Imperium, saw a potential threat that needed careful monitoring. Ambassador Rodriguez continued her presentation, each slide a clinical demonstration of human technological innovation. Quantum entanglement communication systems, adaptive camouflage technologies, neural-linked combat networks that function more like living organisms than traditional military platforms. "We are not seeking conflict," she stated clearly. "We are demonstrating our capacity for self-defense." Behind the diplomatic facade, something more profound was happening. Humanity was no longer seen as a young, emerging species. They were now a potential major power that had announced its arrival with surgical precision. The Zarnak diplomatic channels remained suspiciously silent. Their massive bureaucratic system was struggling to process a defeat that defied all their strategic models. An entire forward base, considered the pinnacle of their defensive technologies, had been systematically dismantled without a single human life lost. Intelligence suggests complete systemic failure, reported Dr. Marcus Chen, the lead analyst for the human diplomatic team. Their defensive networks were not just defeated, they were fundamentally misunderstood. Smaller spacefaring civilizations began to recalculate their diplomatic strategies. Trade routes that had been dominated by the Zarnak now seemed potentially open. Technology transfer agreements that had been impossible now appeared negotiable. The Galactic Council's final report was unprecedented. Not a condemnation, not a celebration, but a clinical assessment that would be studied for generations. Humanity had not just entered the galactic stage. They had rewritten the rules of engagement. As the diplomatic meeting concluded, Ambassador Rodriguez allowed herself the slightest hint of a smile. Not a gesture of triumph, but of understanding. The galaxy had just met humanity, and nothing would be the same again. Captain David Williams stood on the bridge of the U.S. Centauri Remembrance, the flagship of humanity's final assault fleet. 1 million ships stretched behind him, a living constellation of technological marvel and collective human resolve. Each vessel carried more than weapons. They carried names. Names of every life lost in the original colony. Names of families. Of dreamers. Of those silenced but not forgotten. The quantum AI interface hummed through the ship's systems, a consciousness that was both machine and something more. Tactical readouts danced across holographic displays, showing the approach to the Zarnak home systems, a region of space that had been considered impenetrable for millennia. All systems synchronized, reported Lieutenant Elena Rodriguez, her neural link creating a perfect harmony between human intuition and machine precision. The fleet moved not as individual vessels, but as a single breathing organism. The Zarnak defensive grid appeared, a massive network of energy barriers, automated defense platforms, and planetary shield systems that had repelled every invasion attempt in galactic history. Millions of defensive nodes created a web of technological complexity that should have been impossible to penetrate. They never understood what was coming. The first wave struck like a quantum thunderbolt. Ships that didn't just move, but existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Weapons that weren't simple energy projections, but complex quantum disruption fields that could unravel molecular bonds at a fundamental level. Initiating quantum cascade, Williams commanded. The human fleet didn't attack. They became a living, adaptive network that rewrote the very rules of spatial combat. Defensive platforms found themselves targeting nothing, or worse, targeting themselves. Communication networks collapsed as quantum entanglement algorithms invaded and dismantled their most secure systems. Dr. Emily Reyes, coordinating from the Mission Control Center on Earth, watched the battle unfold like a complex mathematical equation solving itself. Each microsecond provided new data, new understanding of alien technological limitations. The Zarnak response was desperate and fractured. Their most advanced defensive systems, developed over thousands of years of galactic dominance, became obsolete in moments. Ships that had been considered invincible simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but fundamentally unmade at a quantum level. Multiple critical systems compromised, Rodriguez reported. Her voice was calm, almost mechanical, reflecting the perfect synchronization between human intelligence and quantum AI. Planetary shield systems that had protected Zarnak worlds for millennia began to destabilize, not through brute force, but through a systematic deconstruction of their fundamental technological infrastructure. The human fleet didn't just attack, they rewrote the very mathematical principles that define the Zarnak's defensive capabilities. Admiral James Calloway's voice came through the communication network. "Remember why we're here," he said simply. Every ship carried a memorial, names etched into quantum-encoded hull surfaces. The Centauri colony might have fallen, but its spirit lived in every weapon, every strategic decision, every quantum-entangled communication pulse. The final assault was less a battle and more a surgical dismemberment of an entire civilization's technological infrastructure. Zarnak command structures collapsed not from direct attack, but from a complete understanding and manipulation of their own systems. Primary targets neutralized, Williams announced. But it wasn't a declaration of victory. It was a mathematical conclusion. As the quantum dust settled, a single transmission was sent, not a message of triumph, but of remembrance. For Centauri, for every life lost, we are humanity. The galactic map would forever be marked by this moment, not as a victory of violence, but a demonstration of what happens when a species is pushed beyond its limits, when technological innovation meets collective human will. The Zarnak had tried to silence humanity. Instead, they had given birth to something far more profound. A species that could turn destruction into creation, limitation into innovation, grief into resolve. The apocalyptic symphony concluded, and the galaxy listened in stunned silence. The reconstruction of the Centauri colony began precisely 3 months after the final battle, where once there had been only destruction, now rose a monument to human resilience and innovation. Dr. Lauren Chen stood at the center of the new habitat dome, her fingers tracing the quantum-reinforced walls that could withstand impacts that would have obliterated entire planets just months earlier. Around her, a city rose, not just a colony, but a statement of human determination. "We're not rebuilding," she told the assembled teams of engineers, scientists, and survivors. "We're evolving." The massive industrial capacity developed during the war transformed overnight. Shipyards that had produced combat vessels now constructed research stations, exploration platforms, and diplomatic outreach centers. The 700,000 ships that had been humanity's weapon became the foundation of its most ambitious exploration initiative. Admiral James Calloway oversaw the initial diplomatic missions. The galactic powers that had watched humanity's conflict with the Zarnak now found themselves facing a completely transformed species. Diplomatic missions weren't just about trade or territory. They were about shared knowledge, technological exchange, and a new understanding of collective galactic cooperation. On the reconstructed Centauri colony, a memorial stood at the center of the new habitat. It wasn't a traditional monument of stone or metal, but a living quantum archive. Every name of those lost in the original attack was encoded into its very structure, a permanent, unalterable memory that would serve as both remembrance and warning. Dr. Emily Rice led the first major technological exchange program. The quantum technologies developed during the conflict were too important to be kept solely for military purposes. Research centers from 17 different spacefaring civilizations began collaborative projects that would have been unimaginable months earlier. "We're not just sharing technology," Rice explained during a galactic conference. "We're redefining the concept of technological progress." The human approach was different from previous galactic powers. Instead of hoarding knowledge, they began open-source initiatives that allowed multiple species to contribute and benefit. Quantum communication networks became a shared resource. Adaptive technologies that had been developed for warfare found peaceful applications in medical research, environmental restoration, and interstellar exploration. Captain Alexandra Gonzalez led the first deep space exploration mission using the technologies developed during the conflict. The ships were no longer just vessels of war. They were living research platforms that could adapt to environments no previous expedition could survive. "Our greatest weapon," she told her crew, "is our ability to understand, to adapt, to grow." The Centauri colony became more than a settlement. It became a symbol of human potential. Schools were established that taught not just technical skills, but the philosophy of adaptive thinking. Students learned from the collective experience of survival, innovation, and resilience. Economic systems transformed. The massive industrial infrastructure that had been created to fight the Zarnak now turned toward solving galactic challenges. Space mining became a collaborative effort. Environmental restoration projects began on multiple worlds. Technologies developed for survival now became tools for creation. Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez, who had survived the original attack, led the memorial reconstruction team. Each building, each piece of infrastructure was designed with a dual purpose: functional necessity and remembrance. Quantum-encoded walls carried the stories of those lost, ensuring that no life would be forgotten. The Galactic community watched in astonishment. Humanity had not just survived an existential threat. They had transformed it into an opportunity for unprecedented growth and cooperation. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez represented humanity in the new Galactic Council. Her approach was neither aggressive nor submissive, but fundamentally collaborative. The diplomatic strategies developed during the conflict became a new model of interstellar communication. "We are not defined by our ability to destroy," she would often say. "We are defined by our capacity to rebuild, to understand, to grow." As the first anniversary of the Centauri colony's reconstruction approached, something profound had occurred. The attack that was meant to silence humanity had instead given it a voice louder than any weapon. On the newly constructed observation deck of the Centauri colony, a simple inscription captured the essence of humanity's journey. From the ashes of destruction, we build. From the silence of loss, we speak. We are humanity. The galaxy listened, and for the first time, it truly heard.